Hello, I know at least Terry's watching at the moment. It looks like there are 4 other people. So if somebody could just put a comment in the live chat to confirm that the sound and vision's working okay. And I will see you at past, which is in 7 minutes and 13 seconds, according to my countdown. See you then. Hello, good evening, and welcome to In Studio Live, the 81st edition. And yes, we are genuinely live this week after last week's pre-recorded, quote, almost live stream, which I was live in the chat, but not live in the studio due to some football match or other that was going on. And people wanted to watch that rather than watch me. Can't think why. Right, welcome everyone. And if you are new to the live stream, please say hi in the live chat if you're able to. A few faces in there, a couple that I haven't seen for a little while. Richard, nice to see you back off your boat. Although, didn't it break down? I heard rumours that one of the Fred boats had broken down. So if that was yours and it cut short your time on board, sorry to hear that. And welcome to Mark, who I think is the first time I've seen you in the chat, Mark. So hi, welcome. Bob, have I seen you for a while? You're normally there. And Gary is always there, as is Terry. So welcome one and all, and I'll give greetings to anybody else if you say hello in the live chat. So let's get a move on with tonight's show. Yes, and Richard's confirming that he broke the boat. Yep. Well, what can I say, Richard? First time post-COVID, we let you on a ship and you go and break it. It's not good enough, you know. Not good enough, right? Come on, let's get on with the live stream. Enough of the joking. Right, okay. So the power of perspective is our theme for tonight. So what are we going to look at? Well, I'm trying very hard to keep the show short, under an hour, and I think I might manage it tonight. I've got image feedback, and because I've only got one from the email, I'm going to roll it all into one set tonight on image feedback. I'm going to look briefly at the power of perspective. Now, some of you, if you've heard me do my talks on ships, as I know a couple of people who watch, that's where you first come across me. You may find some of this a little bit familiar on there, but it's good as a reminder. And then we're going to have a look at the before and after challenge. I've got a new exercise this week. We're on exercise 10, hard to believe it. There's, in theory, 2 more before we get to the after part of that. And of course, right at the end, I will announce the image of the week. So that's something to stay tuned for on there. Right. It is interactive, and as you heard, there's a little bit of banter going on between myself live and Richard in the chat there. I've known Richard for a little while. We first met on a cruise ship, thus the comments about him breaking the Fred Olsen one that he was on. Right. Anyway, let's get on with the feedback. But if you have got questions, put them in the live chat. I will pick them up as we go through. And yeah, we can have a bit of banter in there as well. Do comment along as we go on. Right. Okay. Image feedback. So I do try and encourage people to send images to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk because that gives me a bit more information to go on. But failing that, I will harvest images from the Facebook group. More about Facebook group later and talk about them. So let's have a look at what we've got for tonight. I'm leading with the feedback. So let's head over into Lightroom. And I'm going to start with the image which did come in via email, which is from Gary Platt, and I really like this image, and it's spot on theme for tonight as well about perspective and point of view. So let me try and show you that full screen. It's a flower photographed from below, and you'll see as I give my little bit of a talk on this, this is one of the things I recommend. Try shooting from below. So let's have a look at the data, the shooting data for this. As that's the one thing I can do when it's emailed to me that I can't do when I look at the Facebook ones, because Facebook strips it all out. So let's see how Gary shot this. It was at 1/2000th of a second at f2.8. Interesting. I would have probably gone for a slightly wider depth of field, not by much. Possibly I'd have pushed it up. I probably would have pushed it up to about f8 to try and get, because there's a big risk with something like this that you get very little of it in sharp focus. And as we can see on here, we've got the center and just, actually there's quite a few on there. I thought there'd be more slightly out of focus with it on there. With that, but you can see here how the stalk's in focus, but the actual subflower, I don't know what you actually call them, that's not quite in focus, and we have to hunt around for ones which are in true focus. So I'd have probably pushed my my aperture, closed it down just a little bit to get a few more of these sharp in the image, but I mean it works on there. ISO 100, absolutely spot on. Oh, excuse me. Nice processing with it, nice contrast in there. I wonder, and I haven't tried this in advance, but, and I'm not going to be able to quite achieve it by just keeping the square thing, but trying to get it's a personal thing. I quite like having, when I've got a stalk, having it coming in from the corner on there. Now I know enough about Gary's photography to know that his decision would have been quite deliberate to not do that, and it does work. I'm just showing this is my personal inclination when I do it. I tend to do that, so it's probably no bad thing that that Gary's subverted that. So let's undo that crop. Yeah, on there. So right, back having a look at that data. Yeah, let's just zoom in just a little bit on this. Now, I can see that, Gary, that you've pushed it a little bit in post-production, probably trying to pull out more detail in the shadows on there, which is understandable because the sky would have been bright, and I think you've had to pull up some detail to get in. But there's a few sort of, it looks a little bit halo-y in places. Now, that might be the hairs on there, but here in particular, it looks like there's a little bit of a halo going on with it, which I'm not sure about, particularly on the left-hand side. The right-hand side's hairs definitely will have caused it, but the left-hand side, I'm not sure. So it's one of those where it's very difficult to what to do on it. I think you've done a good job with it on there. I like the concept, and particularly 10 out of 10 for the perspective of shooting below the flower on there. So really like it. Well done. Right, John, I don't know whether you're watching tonight, but John's been doing the before and after challenge, and instead of showing the whole range of his images, if you want to see the full range, they're on the Facebook group, so go and have a look at those. But this was the one about reflectors, and it's set up with natural light coming in from one side and a range of different reflectors on the left-hand side. And this particular one, John's got quite inventive in that he's put in some brown card, which gives a lovely gentle warming on the shadow side. It gives detail in it, but it warms it at the same time. And I think this has worked really well with this. Of the whole set of images that you produced, John, I think this is really the outstanding one with it. And I do like that idea of using the brown calm. Compositionally, you've put it on a third line, you've got your horizon low down with it and the camera matching that. So all that works. And this looks like a piece that could easily be used in a magazine with copy text around it. It all works really well. I'm assuming it's sharp focus. I've got no reason to believe it wouldn't be on there. So nice image, and the whole set showing the different use of reflectors works really well, John. So well done for completing the exercise, and well done with the images that you've created. Sonia, I don't think you're watching, but just to say about this one is that the nice use of a vignette on the toadstool. I would feather the vignette just a little bit more on that. I'd also think about coming down lower with this, so that you're shooting more, instead of looking down on it like that, shoot more along with it. I think would work perhaps slightly better on there with it, if that's possible. And I know it's quite tricky to get the camera down into those really low positions, and sometimes you have to lie on the ground to do it, unless you've got a fold out tiltable screen to be able to do it. But it's a nice shot. As far as I can tell, everything is lovely and sharp on it. I like the fact it's on the 1/3 line, ticking a lot of boxes. Well done. Another one from John. This was one of a set that he put up there of lilies, and now I'd love to see the settings on this. I don't have them, but John's done the right thing and focused on the center of the flower, the stamen on there. I don't know what aperture you were shooting at. It would have been nice to have a slightly wider depth of field so that more of the droplets were in focus on there, but that's a minor point. The background works nicely. It's dark, it's contrasty, but it's natural. It's not pure black. And I normally try to say avoid pure black backgrounds if you can with flowers. I know certainly with the Royal Photographic Society, if you're doing an ARPS with them and you were doing ones on nature and flowers, it would be a big no-no to have that plain black background. They like to see some form of context to the flowers. So well done on that. Mark, I can see what you're trying to achieve with this. It's a lovely shot of the couple. I'm a big fan of quirky angles in photography, and I would just like to see almost a bit more of a wider angle with this to make it work. Because it almost looks like they're photobombing their own wedding photo. You know, this whole idea of just looking in, hey, like that. It looks almost like they're doing that, particularly with the groom, because he's looking at the camera. I think if we got a slightly wider shot, that would have avoided that with it. But I like the idea of using the tilt to get both them and the congregation in there. That's worked well. Exposure is spot on. Obviously you're shooting at a very shallow depth of field because the bride is in focus and the groom's just slightly out of focus. I don't know with the settings with the lighting that you had there and the options that you had, whether you could have just pushed the ISO a little bit more just to give you a slightly larger depth of field so that the groom was in focus on there. But exposure spot on, there's nothing blown out, and it's so easy to blow out the veil on an image like this, especially when it's backlit. So well done for for that. Just those few little bits and pieces with it. It might even have worked without the tilt as well, but I like the idea of trying the tilt on it. Hopefully that's helped you a little bit on that, Mark. Another one of Sonia's, one of her nice buildings, lovely blue sky in there, nice 1/3 use of the rule of thirds, of horizon on the third line, the building predominantly on the third there. Bit of framing and mirroring going on here with the tree on this side and the tree over there. Yeah, just works nicely. My only thought with it is that I think I'd like to see just a little bit more contrast with this, and that's just that's a very minor thing with it. Let me see whether I can show what I mean. Let's bring the contrast up, bring the saturation just down slightly, very slightly on it, and maybe if I do it with the blacks. No, the blacks isn't doing it, the shadows. I want to darken up some sections of it to make it just a little bit more moody. And unfortunately, because everything is within the same sort of tonal range, it's actually proven quite tricky to do it. But I'm just trying to look for that little bit more contrast in there. Let's see what the before and after is. That's before and that's after. I'm not overly convinced with my own edit on there, but hopefully you can see what I'm aiming with it. It just looks a little bit flat in this version with it, and that's generally caused by, I'm guessing when this was edited, that you've done what we all do, and that is bring the shadows up, bring the highlights down, and pushes everything into the middle, and we lose a lot of the contrast with it on there. So that's my suggestion with that one. And again, another one from Sonia. So great shot, one of her underwater macros, and I just love the detail on these eyes. They are eyes, I think, on it, but absolutely tack sharp on all of this. Because I'm not that familiar with the creature, it's hard to work out whether it's one creature crawling over something or whether this is part of the creature as well. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And John Bamber, I don't think John's watching tonight. It's a really nice nature shot. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about the backgrounds with nature shots. I love the way it's out of focus, but that it's not true black, that we've got this area of colour in there as well. And it just makes the whole thing stand out. Looking at the sharpness of it, the hero flowers are lovely and sharp with that. So the fact that this bit goes off into slightly out of focus doesn't matter at all. Our hero, which is where our eye is going, is lovely and sharp and absolutely spot on with that. Really nice image, John. Thank you for sharing it with the group. Michael, this was a sort of a late addition. Hope you're watching. Again, a lovely perspective. I like the way that Michael's got down to the bug's eye level on here. Everything's really nice and sharp. It doesn't look like anything's blown out. He's kept the highlights within the dynamic range. That shallow depth of field, I think he probably said on the Facebook page what that depth of field was. Let's see if I've got it. Yeah, right, it's f16 for 400th of a second, ISO 1000. Yeah, good choice on settings on that, Michael. And it's come out really well. Personally, because I like my images to have a little bit of contrast to them, I might just push up the clarity just a fraction, and I might just add a little bit more vibrance into it as well. But that's a personal thing. That's not to say your settings are wrong on there. It's just a personal look on that. So there, before and after, it's just a minor tweak to it, but I really like it. Well done, Michael. And it's nice to see it on the third line. You've got plenty of negative space there, and the negative space really works with this image. It gives space for copy text, such as your logo on there and your copyright on there. So well done. Right, let's have a look what's been going on in the chat while I've been waffling, and I'll just have a look. Right, so numbers. Right, I was just first of all struck by the low numbers on tonight. I bet it's the warm weather. Gary was saying, I was holding the camera at arm's length, couldn't see what I was shooting at. Well, yeah, we've all been there, Gary, on that. The fact that you were holding it at arm's length is another reason why I would have gone for a slightly wider depth of field on that, just to give you a better chance of getting something sensible in focus on there with that. So yeah, thanks for the comment, Mark. I'm glad you found the input helpful. Right, okay, so let me just give my standard appeal at this point, and that is, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. If you're watching this on the replay, please add a comment in there. Please hit the like button. There's 8 of you watching and only 4 likes at the moment, so please go hit the like button. And if you are able to share about these live streams with others, then please do so. It would be really helpful. I'm hoping, I think you're all members of my Facebook group that I can see in the chat. And sign up for my newsletter if you haven't done so, link down below on there, on that. Right, so perspective or point of view that's our theme for tonight. So I'm just going to make a few points about this and then talk about the challenge, which is part of the before and after challenge. But the main thing to say is changing where you make your photograph from is the thing that can take an ordinary shot into an extraordinary shot. It can give an image a life of its own. If you think about that, a couple of those images that I've talked about earlier, the fact that Gary shot his plant from down below looking up gives it a really unusual viewpoint. The fact that Mark used a quirky angle on that wedding shot gives an unusual viewpoint on there, and makes the viewer stop and think. And the way to summarize it is basically the phrase, put the camera where the eye doesn't normally go. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in non-COVID times, or prior to COVID, I used to do talks on cruise ships. I'm hoping that I will once again be able to do that in the future. I honestly don't know whether it will happen. I hope it will. But I gave this message, put the camera where the eye doesn't normally go, in one of my talks. I explained all of this. And we were on shore one day, and my wife was on the cruise, and she was walking around and she saw this couple who obviously had been at my lecture, hadn't realized that Anne was my wife, and she overheard this conversation. The man of the couple was trying to take a photograph, and he was going, oh, do I do it from here, or crouch down, or I'll come up here to do it? And he was trying all different things, and his poor wife was getting really impatient with with him. And I'm not sure whether she was trying to be helpful or not, but in desperation, she said, just remember what Ian said in his talk and put the camera where the sun doesn't shine. Well, they nearly remembered what I talked about. So yeah, put the camera where the eye doesn't normally go on there. So how do we normally see the world? This is the key to it. For most of us, we see the world somewhere between 5 foot and 6 foot off the ground, approximately, for most of us. We see an angle of really the equivalent to about 50 millimeter lens, and how we capture that much of a view. So if we can focus in on a particular item or capture more, that gives a different perspective on things. And our brain tries to keep the horizon horizontal. When I do this on a cruise ship, I tell people that if they tilt their head to one side, everything that's currently vertical will still appear to be vertical, which is great fun because I'm on stage and I watch the whole audience just go over on one side and then the other side like that. So if you can change any one of those aspects, you're going to add an element into your image that will make it different. So the aim is to change at least one of those 3 factors: the height off the ground, the angle of view, or the tilt of the camera. The angle of view, I mean either telephoto or wide angle, as opposed to this normal view that we get. So I'm going to look at the first of those tonight, very briefly, which is all about the height that we shoot from and how that can really change our image with it. And there's 2 techniques that we call worm's eye view and bird's eye view in there. So this is what we started with. This is the same technique that Gary used with his flower, putting the camera low down, and it may mean you have to lie on the ground to be able to shoot upwards. It may mean if you've got a tilt screen, you can use that. So you can put the camera down, you can frame it up using that to be able to do that type of shot. And the other another type of worm's eye view is this putting the camera on its back. Let me just tell you a little bit about how this image was created. It's St. Peter's in Rome, and this is the famous canopy in there. And this is a view that you will not see when you go to St. Peter's. There's no way you will ever see this particular view. I have put the camera where the eye cannot go. Why can't it go there? Because there's a bit of that, you know, that velvet red tape that stops you going any further. So what I did, it was a nice shiny floor. So I set my camera on self-timer and I held onto the camera strap, put it on self-timer, hit the shutter release, and then just pushed the camera underneath the velvet tape as far as I could get it to go. Let it took the photo and then just reeled the camera back in using the camera strap on that. And that was the view I got, looking vertically upwards on there. So it gives a really different perspective of how we see somewhere. You would not normally see St. Peter's looking like that. And that's what makes it an interesting shot. Here in Malta, similar sort of thing. Now you can't do this in the UK, they won't let you get that close to the bottom of a crane. This was just in the middle of a street, this crane, you could walk up to the bottom of it. It was quite surreal. And so I took the shot looking straight up and then used it as a sort of lead-in line on there, and got the buildings surrounding it. But it's that worm's eye view looking up that makes the image really work on it. And it's also useful if you've got interesting ceilings. So here in Wells Cathedral, the nice ceiling there, but I've added in an extra element, and that is the column. So I got close to the column, so the column acts as the lead-in line to this, so that we can see we're looking upwards in the shot. And that just makes it that little bit more interesting. I've even done it with weddings, these worm's eye view. And again, this was a similar sort of technique to before, use the camera on self-timer and put it in place, set the self-timer, hit the shutter release. I run out of the rugby scrum, got them to close round and took the shot. And this is great actually, because when I came to put the album together, I could use it either as a horizontal image or as a vertical image. It works either way. So what about the other, which is the so-called bird's eye view? When you look down onto someone, it gives a different perspective. It gives almost an idea of superiority versus inferiority, and it makes the subject look inferior by looking down on it. So this sort of idea actually works quite well with small kids. I've done it here with a teenager on this. But if I'm shooting with kids, I'll often do one, so looking straight down on them. It gives a really quite interesting sort of look and shot. And it often sells as a sort of character image, never as the main image from the shoot, but often as a character one from there. Same idea here with my cat. His head is as big as the sundial on there. Again, it's that area, that amount of distortion that really makes the image work because of it. And again, back to Rome, the Simonetti staircase. That's the standard view, just looking down on it. So that's what I wanted to talk about, just those two aspects, the worm's eye view and the bird's eye view, and how that can affect our images. And I'm going to show you a video in a moment which shows it in more in practical terms, how that affects our photography, and that's part of the before and after challenge exercise that's coming up. But at this point, I just want to take a pause to say thank you to my sponsor this week, which is, as ever, yourselves. And this week's cuppa was brought to me by Peter Saltiel. I know Peter's not watching at the moment, but if you ever do watch this one, Peter, cheers. Really appreciate the drinks. And if you do find the show helpful and want to financially contribute to keeping me on air, as it were, then the link's on the screen. It's also down below. It's basically Buy Me a Coffee that a lot of the YouTubers use, but I've got mine renamed to Buy Me a Tea because I don't drink coffee. So that's what it is on there. So the before and after challenge. Now, if you're not familiar with what this challenge was, it started way back in, I think, March, April time. And there's a whole series of videos on the YouTube channel explaining it. The first part was to go to a location and get a sense of place there and just to photograph it. And then I've been setting almost every week, but not quite, an exercise to really help you understand certain photographic techniques. And then right at the end, I'm going to send you back to where you did your first sense of place location to rephotograph it, and we're going to compare your before and after sets of images to see what the difference is and whether going through these exercises, how it's made a difference to your photography. So if you're new to doing this, then start now. It doesn't matter that you didn't start at the beginning. Just start with that first one, the location, and then work your way through the different stages and post the images in the Facebook group. We're not trying to get everybody doing it all at the same pace on there. Just do it at your own pace, and I guarantee you will find it helpful. It will help crystallize certain techniques and help you understand what's going on with your photography on there. And we've got images from various sorts. We've done the before images I talked about. We looked at composition, freezing and blurring the action, aperture and depth of field and techniques with that. We've looked at lenses and focal length, how that affects the images that we create. We've looked at night photography and finding that magic time for the light. We've looked at how exposure compensation worked and the fact that how even the composition can affect the exposure compensation. We looked at that. We looked at how reflectors, and I showed you one image from John's set on there, how that can be used to add an effect into our images. We've looked at fill-in flash, and the previous one was about black and white conversions. Well, tonight we are looking at point of view or perspective, which is what we've been talking about tonight. So I'm going to play the video, and I'll draw me back here in a few minutes at the end of the video on this. Hello, welcome to In Studio. In this, my latest exercise in the before and after challenge, today we're going to look at the effect that the position of the photographer has on the image that he's creating of his subject. Hello, welcome to In Studio. I'm Ian Butterfield. This is the I think 10th video or 10th exercise in my before and after challenge. Today we're going to look all about perspective, the photographer's perspective on his subject. And I'm joined here in Vernon Park by model Afra. Thank you for joining me, Afra. Hi. Right, and when you are faced with photographing a subject, the natural thing to do is to just stand in front of your subject, probably about here, and just take a simple shot like this. Now, what you can see with that shot is perfectly adequate. You'll notice I've got a speed light in there, adding that little bit of light into the scene as we've seen in the previous exercises. But it's a fairly boring shot. Now, one of the things to be aware of is the positioning that you're at when you create the photo can have can make a real difference. So, for example, if I was to come in and crouch down in front of Afra and take the shot looking up, I can make it into a much more dynamic shot. It makes Afra look a lot more dominant in the frame. So let me do that and show you what that looks like. So nice big dominant pose with your arms folded, something like that, and I'll lie down at your feet, and 3, 2, 1. And you can see with that shot that it makes Afra look really dominant and powerful in the frame. Conversely, if I was to shoot Afra from high up, it would make her look small, more insignificant, and perhaps worried. So let me grab some step ladders and we'll do that. Right, Afra, I want you to look a little bit timid, or as though something's going horribly wrong. Whoa! And something is going horribly wrong. It's my step ladders. No. Yeah. So something like 3, 2, 1. So you can see from those two images, it gives a very different feel for our subject just by changing whether we shoot from below, on an eye level, or above. Now, why is that important? Well, it's really important, perhaps not at the extremes you've just seen, but with just general portraits. Let me move the ladders out of the way and I'll show you. There's a tendency with portrait photography to get too close in with your subject. And what happens when you do that? You use a wider angle than perhaps you need. And if I was to photograph Afra now, from here, you'll see what happens. You'll see that it's not a particularly flattering shot, and I'm looking down on Afra because I'm in close. And I hope you can see I was tilting the camera down. And that makes it's a slightly uneasy shot, that positioning. Far better to get much further back to say about here, and then if I crouch down and I'm now shooting up at an angle, and if I take the same shot again from down here. 3, 2, 1. What you can see with that shot is it's much more flattering because it doesn't foreshorten Afra's legs, but it makes her look much more dominant in the frames, not to the extent of the one where I was crouching down below and she had the arms folded, but still it's a much more dominant image rather than making her look subservient to the camera and to the photographer. So your exercise for this week is to find a subject. If you've got a model such as I've managed to acquire for the exercise, great. If not, a family member. And if you really, it really does need to be a person on this one. You might be able to make it work with some form of I don't know, cuddly toy if it's a large one, but it really works better with a person. I want you to take those same 5 shots that I've created. One straight on, which was shooting from here. From down below, a very dominant type of image. From high up, if you do go up on step ladders, do be careful. Mine were a bit rickety here because of the grass. I won't be held responsible if you fall off them, so please don't. And then do the same again with the standing up shots, but coming in fairly close, wide angle, and you'll see the effect that has on foreshortening the legs, not very flattering, and then going further out, zooming in and crouching down, and you'll find it's a much more flattering angle to shoot from. So those 5 images for this week's exercise, and as ever, post them to the Facebook group or wherever it says down below the video. And thanks for watching, and until next time, keep making great photos. Bye for now. Right, yes, that was the exercise. So this coming week, I'm going to get all the outstanding previous ones loaded up onto YouTube for you, so you can catch up for those who need to do that. So just to recap, the 5 images: just your normal perspective photographing the person, from below, from above, and then that exercise showing the power of moving back, shooting low down for full length images. So that close in, wide angle shot, look at the distortion that creates and how that isn't flattering, and how going further away, crouching down and zooming in really does make your subject much more flattering. Just a little story to tell about that. I was on a cruise ship a few years ago, and I gave that tip about shooting from kneeling down to take shots, full length shots. And I had a chap come up to me, he sought me out to say that he just wanted to say thank you, that after 25 years of marriage, that finally he's taken a photograph of his wife that his wife actually likes, and it was purely down to that tip. Why was it particularly significant for him? Well, he was 6 foot odd tall and his wife was 5 foot, so every shot that he'd taken was looking down on her, and that's just not flattering. So once he'd learned to go further back, to crouch down, to kneel down, and to zoom in, he got much better images of his wife, and his wife was actually then happy with the images that he created. So it really does work, that technique on there. Right, let's have a look what's going on in the chat. So Richard was asking about remote shutter releases for his wildlife photography, particularly kingfishers. Not sure whether you need, if you are within a reasonable distance of the camera, if you're close enough, you can usually get cabled ones about trying to do this so that my hands are still in shot, something like that sort of length, and that would be fine for burst mode. If you want something wireless, then there's probably going to be some form of a delay. Now, one thing that you could think about, because you're with the R5 as I am, is there are Canon specific triggers from Yongnuo that I use that have I bought them for firing speed lights, and they also have the ability to act as remote triggers as well, and those are pretty instantaneous. What I haven't tried, because I tend to use them with purely with the flash, is to know whether they'll work in continuous mode. But if I can get those to, if those work on an R5, that might be a good solution for you. So maybe we can try that at some point. It's not the trigger that you walked away from the studio with, by the way. It's the other type of trigger that I have here. So you nicked the wrong one, mate. You nicked the wrong one. No, I'll look into that, because those are available, and you'll get double use out of them, because you can use them for firing your speed lights as well. So I would check those. I think they are the 601, 602Ps, Yongnuo ones. They're transceivers, so that they are what you have on the camera and what you have on the flash and what you use as the trigger in hand are exactly the same unit. So with 3 of those, you can remotely trigger your camera, trigger the flash as well. So you've got lots of options. One of the videos on my YouTube channel might show me using them. It'll be one of the really old ones. There is, I can't remember whether it's practically video number 1. It's that distorted self-portrait. I think I talk about using them with that. If it's not that one, it's the multiplicity one, which is about 3 videos after that. So you have to scroll right the way down. You might see me using them and get a close-up of what the triggers actually look like on that. But that's using them with a flash, but you can just use them to remote the trigger. You don't need them you don't have to have the flash part in there with that. Right, the other comment again from Richard is about your portfolio. Now, those of you who are on my mailing list, I sent out a link to that. It's a new portfolio site from the people who do model folio and adult folio. It's a sort of general folio site for all forms of photography. It's not limited to model photography on there. Some interesting images going up there. 1 or 2 not so interesting. Unfortunately, there's a couple of people who are insisting on treating it like adult folio, which is basically adult level images, and they're posting basically hardcore porn on there as well, which in my view is spoiling that site. If you want to post those kind of images, adult folio is the place for that. Have an account on there and post it there. This one's for general photography, but a useful little site, and I'm hoping that they will grow it and it'll be a good place for feedback and for discussions. At the moment, almost all the threads in the forum on there are mine, so do track me down and follow me on there, Richard. I haven't found you on there yet. I will go looking after the live stream on that. So, right, let's get back to the PowerPoints. And yeah, no more feedback. I've done all the feedback I'm doing on there. I've done the interactive. So it just remains for me to announce this week's member photo of the week. And I hope I updated the PowerPoints to include it, because I know I prepared it. Yeah, here it is. It's the one by John Bamber, the flower, which I was really quite taken with the colours on this, the technique involved on there. Really nice shot. and that's how it will look as the banner for the coming week. So well done, John. If you're watching this on the replay, you'll probably have seen the banner up there already, but I'll be changing it very shortly. And who's going to be next week? Well, post some images to the Facebook group and come join the live stream and find out. So that really brings me to the end of it. So if you've got images for next week, we're going to look at natural light portraits next week, how to use just the natural light. I've done a fair bit with flash on there, so it's sort of reflectors and diffusers together in there, and how we can create interesting shots in the natural light using those. Which means for me to do the video I need to do, I've got to hope I get the right weather for it at the same time that I can get a model to pose for it. But if you've got images for that, post them to the Facebook group. If you want feedback on them, post them to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. And until next time, thanks for watching, and as ever, keep making great photos. See you all next week. Bye for now.